My guest today is one of those persons who's supposed to go unnoticed at sporting events, but it's impossible not to notice or at least recognize the accomplishments of Dave Hasley. An Abingdon native, Dave is wrapping up his 49th and final season as a basketball official. Let that sink in. For nearly half a century, Dave has been running up and down the court, blowing the whistle, making the calls, all for the love of the kids in the game. He's worked everything from junior high games to IHSA state tournament games, including the Girls State Championship game in 2011 and 2013. The Illinois Basketball Coaches Association elected Dave to its Hall of Fame in 2013. But it's not just the sport with the orange ball where Dave makes the calls. He's officiated football, umpired baseball for 43 years, working state finals, I believe, in both those sports too. I think it's estimated, I'm not sure how accurate this is, that Dave is officiated in the neighborhood of 9,000 games. And that's truly a remarkable and an admirable feat. So Dave is here today to reminisce a little bit about his amazing journey. Dave, thanks for joining me on WGIL.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
You're very welcome. So 49 years of officiating basketball. You know, when you first started, did you ever imagine you'd be here almost 50 years later doing the same thing?
No. I have been very lucky. I've been healthy all this time. Great people to work with, great people. And it's been a lot of fun.
How did you get started? You know, what level did you start at? Do you remember your first game?
Back when I first started, we were working two-person,
Right.
two officials. So I went with my mentor, who was Herb Brown from here in Abingdon, and we met a guy by the name of Van Wilson over in Nauvoo, and I worked the sophomore game with each one of them, and then they worked the varsity game. So I made $10.
$10, okay.
And I learned a lot from that. The other thing that we have to look at when I first started was girls basketball was not as big as it is now.
Right.
In fact, it was just in its infancy stages, which didn't help you move up the ladder that fast. So I probably worked 3 or 4 years just doing that with a lot of guys that Dick Brown, who used to be the AD at Macomb. Herb helped out quite a bit. And then I got noticed by George Lundeen and got asked to work the famous Thanksgiving tournament.
Okay. Yeah. Those are some big name teams, right?
Right. I remember one of my first games was Marshall and Manual.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about a couple legends, right?
Right.
Yeah.
6:00 game. I think it was 6:00. I don't know. It was on Thursday night. I remember it was the only show in town. We had packed house. And I think that year, Marshall is the only team to beat Manual until they made it to the state tournament.
Okay. So are we talking Luther Bedford and Dick Van Sack as the coaches then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, you know, why did you get started in officiating in the first place? What kind of piqued your interest?
Well, I went to one of the service club meetings for a free meal. I'll be honest with you. That's the only reason. And John Davis, who was a local official, came down and spoke to us. And that kind of piqued my interest. I've always been a sports nut. I was a card collector, kind of moved on, wanted to play, but wasn't very good. So he kind of piqued my interest on something I could possibly do after high school for a little bit. Well, I went to college, I think.
Right. You mentioned this, the game has obviously changed since when you first started. You know, it was 2-man crews, no 3-point shot. I believe no dunking. Maybe that was just coming back. So how much has the game changed during your career?
Oh, it's changed quite a bit. The game every year, the kids get stronger, faster. They're younger. We're older. It's instead of the pounded in game where you pound it into your big guys, it's now more outside shooting. So the game's changed that way. The game will change when the shot clock comes out. Not as much as people think, but it'll change the game a little bit with that too.
How would you say, looking back over the 49 years, did your style or approach to officiating change as your career progressed?
I would say it did. As I was climbing the ladder to get to be a state tournament, I set myself goals. My first goal was to work varsity basketball. Second was to get a full varsity schedule. That meant every Tuesday, Friday, and some Saturdays. So I worked that goal, and then all of a sudden I started getting, well, I'll be real honest with you. I didn't get a state tournament till after I'd been working 30 years.
Wow.
So then all of a sudden they started popping just like this. So,
Yeah.
2006, I worked a boys final. I remember having North Lawndale from Chicago and IVC from Chillicothe. That was my first game. I was so scared. Scared, nervous. You know, the biggest thing is you're on TV. I'd watched that as a kid. I sat and watched the state tournament. I'd skipped if I could have, but I didn't. I'd skipped school to watch
Yeah.
state tournament. There I was. And it was in Peoria, it was a pretty good sized crowd that day. So
Yeah. How about, speaking of style, did your temperament change at all? I mean, what did you learn about not necessarily making the calls, but, how you did it?
well, as you get older, you realize that it's not. First off, it's not about you.
Right.
You got to turn around, and one of the biggest things that I do while I teach at clinics is I talk about what coaches are like. Coaches are paid to make wins. We're there to go out and make the game as smooth as we can. We can come in and see a coach. After a while, you get to realize that coach has to look at that same that same bunch every day.
Yeah.
And you go in once or twice and you see them, but they work hard. I mean, with I've done a little coaching myself, but that's a tougher job. Ours is pretty easy compared to that.
Yeah. In your opinion, what are some good and maybe not so good rule changes in high school basketball over the years?
Um, the real good one, I think the 3-point shot coming out was a real good one. Um,
Were you leery about that when it first came out?
yeah, I was.
I know Evan Massey at Galesburg has talked about, he said, well, girls basketball is not going to have that big an impact. And of course it has, just as much as it has in boys game. So,
Well, he's one of the leaders of that too.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when he played that system, they
Uh-huh.
shot more 3-pointers than anybody around. But
Yeah.
that was a big change. One of I'm not 100% sure on bad rule changes. There's rule changes we don't like, but we have to call them. Um, I'm not. This There's just things that you just got to work through. I won't
Yeah.
point any bad changes. It's just
Anything you'd like to see implemented?
I'd
In the
like to
rules?
see him put in the arc underneath the basket.
Okay.
I think that would eliminate the deep block charge that we have, the one that's underneath the basket, or it would try to help eliminate that. It also make on the block charge a little easier to work. So,
And you mentioned the shot clock that's coming in next year. How do you think that's going to impact the game?
um, I've worked it luckily at the Macomb Western tournament, and I don't think it will affect as much as people think it will. When I first heard about it, I thought that they'd play around for 30 seconds and then fire up a 30-footer. But I worked a championship game in the Macomb tournament 2 years ago where the final score was Rockridge 36, Macomb 33. No violations. And talking to people that work in Iowa, it really hardly comes into play. I
Okay.
kept the shot clock a couple times. The only time that it really came with one game where we were using it at a sophomore game, the kids forgot we had it. And there was a violation. And then, so very seldom do you have violation, but it might speed the game up a little bit.
Okay. This is Jay Redfern. I'm talking to longtime official Dave Hasley. So obviously there's a lot to watch as an official, but how much can an official watch or appreciate good basketball, like really talented players? How much are you just focused in on what you have to call compared to like, hey, this is, this is a good play. That's not a good play.
No, you see the good plays. I mean, you have to focus in on what's going on, but I mean, when you see the the kid that takes off, and sometimes I got caught when a kid would take a breakaway and go with a slam, you'd think, "Oh my goodness, what a good shot that was," or good player, but good players are noticed more than you think. So it's
How much do you talk to players during a game?
well, my part of my game right now is that I try to talk to a lot of them. I
Mm-hmm.
usually try to pick out the player that's going to help me make things work better. That's something I've learned through on working. I mean, I try to build a relationship with all the kids. I don't want somebody to think I'm a big meanie or, you know, there's times I have to be, but there's
Yeah.
also times when, kid makes a great shot, nice pass. Just say, hey, nice pass, nice shot.
I'm sure that's
I'm trying to be a role model. I'm trying to recruit more kids into it, but
yeah. I'm sure that's appreciated.
I hope so. I hope so. I have a bunch of kids that come up to me, um, and we talk all the time. So um, it's something that I'm very proud of. Is that I got kids that will come up, that have been done, and they'll come up and talk to you. And it was like the United kids always ask me when we're going to have a baseball game together. They're really appreciative of the way I umpire. So.
Yeah. So, players and coaches, they get extra pumped up for a big game. Do you, as an official, get more pumped up for bigger games? Say there's a really big rivalry, or the conference championships on the line. Is there any more pressure in a big game?
Um, I would say yes. You get a little more excited about it. Like tonight, we're going out and we're going to work regional championship. There's always a nice feeling there. The further you go down the road, the bigger the game gets. If you don't get excited, it's time to get out. But I
Yeah.
mean, I still get excited. It's just that you don't show it. You like they've always said, you learn to put your butterflies in formation so to make them work. So.
Yeah. You mentioned that you get nervous before the state tournament games. How about just games in general? I mean, are you far enough along where you don't get nervous, or is there any kind of like, anxiety before games at all?
Oh, you want to work the best game you can work. You might have a little nick or hurt. You want to work around that. Um, you, you still get a little nervous. I get a little more nervous if I have a town, or there's still, when you walk into a place, then there's a great tradition like Galesburg, or this year when I worked Galesburg and Morton, I was quite a bit. One, it was Lexi's first year. You wanted to see what she was going to do. Morton was supposed to be really good. Just kind of want to go out and have a good game. So,
Yeah. So when was the last time something came up in a game where maybe you were caught off guard, or a partner, and that you had to confer, with your team to how to handle something?
well, this year in the Fulton County tournament at Havana, we had a shot went up and a guy batted the ball into the back court, which you got to have possession for over and back. And he called over and back. I came up to him and we talked about it, knowing that it wasn't. So because the ball was loose, we had to go to alternate possession. There's still little things that you get caught with that, and as the seasoned veteran, I should know about everything that happens. But there are things that happen that you have. It's like, oh no, but
Do obviously coaches scout the other teams. Do you as an official kind of anticipate what kind of game you're going to call, as far as like a team, maybe a 3-point shooting team or a running team? Do you ever look at that at all?
Oh, you look at it. You kind of watch the scores. When we meet in the one of the big changes that's happened with high school officiating is that it used to be you had a crew of guys that you worked with. I mean,
Mhm.
I worked with Dave Pickerel for 30 years.
Right.
I knew what he was going to do, and then we added other guys in between. Now, you with the assigning process, you may not work with the same guy. I'm, more than once or twice a year. So we first thing out of, hey, have you had these guys? Yeah, I had these guys. What kind of game do you expect? You know, you always walk in with that assumption that this team just really beat this other team the other day, and you see how they play, and you expect them to be a really good game, and then all of a sudden, bang, it's a close one, and you never know what's going on. So you you're kind of scouting every time.
Take us inside the captain's meeting for somebody that hasn't been in that. What goes on when the captains from both sides meet, with the coaches before the game?
The first thing that we ask is that are to the coaches, are the players properly equipped? They have to be sleeves have to be the same color, um, things like that. So that happens. Then you talk to the kids about they're going to help you with sportsmanship. Sportsmanship's a big issue, as it should be, and you give them the responsibility to take care of that. Um, then you ask the coach to let you know on a timeout whether it's going to be a 30 or a full. And that was a nice rule change that happened when we went to 30-second timeouts. You only
Right.
get two of them, and then um, you ask if there's a trainer, which Galesburg is very lucky to have Brandon as his trainer. So whether they will take care of both teams, and then you're supposed to ask for an AED if one of those is possible. And then I always try to end it. Right now, I'm telling the kids, you've heard long speeches all year long. I'm not going to give you one. I got one more thing to say. Play hard and have fun. That's the end of my captain's meeting. And
I
they
thought
look
it was
at you like, okay, good, because they don't listen anyway. So you just,
How would you say, you mentioned obviously the talent level and the physicality has changed, but how about just the players in general as far as like their attitudes or respect? How has that changed over the years?
I think it's the kids respected you more earlier in my career. There's a little bit of a difference out here right now. I'm not gonna the kids that go out for sports are usually good kids, but some things happen that you'll get one or two that don't respect you. And if you work hard, and that's my philosophy, if I work as hard as you do, you need to respect me because I respect them. I won't tell a guy unless a guy mouths off to me, I won't tell him it was a bad shot or anything like that. I expect them, you know, but we all do bad things every once in a while. We might miss one. I've always told everybody I've never called a perfect game because one of my things was that if I called a perfect game, I'd take my umpiring stuff and take it in the middle of the court that I was working at and I'd set it on fire. Well, I haven't had any gyms catch on fire, so but we try to be as good as we can be.
Yeah. Talk about the relationships you've built over the past 49 years. I mean, players, coaches, other officials, people at the scores table. I mean, you just have to you look back on that and just, kind of marvel at that.
Well, first off, Evan and I have grown up together, so we started working about the same time. He was maybe a year or two ahead of me. I respect Evan uh, immensely because something that he built a program. And Chuck Grant is another one that I have a great relationship. I try uh Barry Swanson was another one that I liked in the Galesburg area. I remember the first time I met Barry was in my first year. I was working a sophomore game at Kiwani, which had a kid by the name of Prusader.
Yeah.
Barry was it worked out to be a good time. I enjoyed the time I worked with them. There's just a lot of coaches that you look at the other officials. Like I said, Dave Pickerel was one that I worked with a lot. There's a gentleman by the name of Jude Kaya that was from Macomb. I built a really good relationship with him. We speak every so often. He's now in Texas. I call him my Texas brother. So, you know, it's good to see it. You build up so many relationships that, plus, kids look to me. I'm looked as a mentor, and I hope I help more officials than you can ever imagine. It's not how many years I've worked, but how many guys I've gotten to a state tournament that mean a lot to me.
Right.
And either it's football, basketball, or baseball. I just hope everybody realizes that I'm trying to help them along.
Yeah. How about some coaches like to work, and that's putting it nicely. Like to work an official, however they want to do it. Does that ever work? And what's your approach when a coach starts trying to get a call or complain about the game?
Really, in the area that I work, people know that that's not going to work with me. But if you get a new coach or somebody that tries that, and I've always told the young guys, I say, we have a very good young official from Knoxville that's 18 years old. They're going to go out after him because they've worked with me. They know I'm not going to do anything. We might talk, we might joke, but he knows what I'm going to do in certain situations. I know what he's going to do, but he doesn't know the young kids. So they're usually the ones that get worked in that situation. But I've been worked. I worked games for Duncan Reed
Yeah.
and all the big Western Big Six guys. And it was biggest compliment I ever got was, that's a pretty good game, kid, from Duncan Reed. So
What's it take? What's the trigger for you to have to, pop a technical on somebody?
it's I'm a little bit, to be real honest with you, disrespect is the biggest thing that gets to me.
Mhm.
Whether it's me or I've only had 2-player technicals all year. I work really hard to keep away from that. I mean, you get the bench technicals, the wrong number or the not putting your book in on time. But the more I've grown, the older I've gotten, the more I've decided to stay away from technicals. One, will they change the game? I had a kid a couple weeks ago mouth off to another kid. It happened. There was one. You got to step up. He taunted him. I had to step in on do that. Just disrespect is more, you know.
Right. How
So,
about obviously the number of officials unfortunately continues to shrink. Why is that, and what can be done to get more people into officiating?
well, the biggest problem is that the mass amount of officials, the average age of a IHSA official right now is about 56, 57 years old. So as we get to this stage, either they get tired of it, body injuries, things like that. Sooner or later, there's going to be a big drop. What we can do, and what I would like to see happen, is maybe we have a class in a high school, an officiating class, or in a junior college, we have an officiating class that comes on. Um, I mean, even some job fairs would be a good idea to go to, would be a way to start. Um, One, they gotta love the game because, like you said, they're yelling and they're screaming, and you may be, when we talked about what we watch, I mean, we have certain areas that we watch and you don't see everything. Used to be with 2 people, you saw more than the game. But if you're the underneath official in a 3-man crew, you're basically watching what's happening with the post players. You don't see what happens out in the outsides. So, you know, things happen. But we need to get more. one, officials need to be good role models. They need to get that young man that's playing that knows he's not going to play in college.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to stay in the game. So I'm always open to people coming. I've had I had a young man that started this year that I have a bunch of old equipment. I gave him, shirts and pants, and I'm trying to help him get along. But we've got things that the IHSA is working with things. We have what we call a probationary official, which is a 15 through 17-year-old young man that wants to start. He can only work junior high and freshman level games, but that gets him into it. Then we have where ADs can give kids a waiver that could help with their first year. I mean, you pay $70 or $80 for two sports to be licensed to work. So if they can get this waiver, it would help them with that. So the game has gotten to where it pays really well now. I mean, it's still not great, but it's a heck of a lot better. My first varsity basketball game in Alexis, I got paid $24.50.
What's it up to now?
I've gotten 155 for 2 games, or you can get 100, 120. I mean, I've seen the money grow so much. Like right now, the postseason in Illinois pays $90 a game. So, look at what's going on. Went from $24 to, and junior high pays really well too. Some people, we need people to work the lower level games. Those are the games that are getting canceled.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious, maybe not a real serious question, but when you watch a game as a spectator, either in person or on TV, is it hard not to do it from the perspective of an official?
It is in person. I've been going to the A-Town girls games.
Yeah.
And they're very good, but they're very fast. And the crews that we have, people are on them constantly. I'll see something and I'll see that it's right, but they won't, But in a game like that, I'm watching the officiating probably more than the game itself. So
Yeah.
and that's what happens now. High school, college on TV, I don't really watch that. I watch the game, but when I'm there in person, I'm watching, and that's one of the things that I hope to develop when I retire. One, I'm going to keep the shot clock in Abingdon, and then I have 2 grandchildren that are playing, and I want to watch them play. Macy plays on the Abingdon girls team, and my grandson Ronald lives in Bushnell. Well, he's a 6th grader, and he's playing on the 7th grade team. So it's time Dave went and became a grandpa.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish with the rapid fire round. I'm going to say something, you give me your first thought. So, what's the most difficult play for an official to call in basketball?
Block charge.
Always been that way?
Always been that way.
Okay. What do you think the most misunderstood rule is in basketball?
Rebounding fouls. You get the big kid that reaches over the top of a guy. If there's no displacement, there's no rule. They scream over the back and all that. But that's probably the one. You can't penalize a kid for being tall.
Right. Okay. What coach was guaranteed when you worked one of their games, they would always say something that would make you laugh?
Chuck Grant from Monmouth Roseville. Evan and I had a little spell where but he can do it too. I mean, when he got his 1,000th win, I said, Evan, I've got probably 1,000 wins. And he says, yeah, and you probably got 1,000 losses too. So
Yeah.
later.
Hey, you get a win and a loss every time you work, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which sport is harder to work? Obviously, you've worked all 3: football, basketball, or baseball.
Basketball. You're inside you're running more. People ask me what my favorite one is football, because you're with 5 guys usually. So you're talking, we might joke clear up to the gym, then we get serious, and then on the way home. Basketball is the toughest one. The season's longer. It's if you're working junior high, you start in the middle of October and you go, or maybe even September. I don't work that much, but you're working clear up to March. Now I'm lucky I get to work March 3rd, Tuesday night. So, baseball starts the 17th. So,
Okay. How about best atmosphere that you've worked a high school basketball game?
Galesburg High School in the probably the Western Big Six, because
Okay.
I also worked a game in Quincy one time. We had Rock Island and Quincy down at Quincy, and this little gray-haired lady sitting on the end line asked me this question. She said, "Are you in Payson?" And I go, "No, ma'am. I'm in Quincy, Illinois. I'm working Rock Island and Quincy, number 1 and 3 in the state." And she goes, "I don't know. You're calling a different game than I'm seeing." I mean, this little silver-haired gal got right into me. So, but the Western Big Six were good.
Yeah.
The state finals in Peoria were good. Everybody wanted to go to Champaign. That's a great place to work, but a packed house is the best thing to work in.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Totally with you on that.
I can say we went to the Mark and worked at super sectional, and then came to Macomb and worked the super sectional. Same crowd, just the difference is that at Western Hall it was full.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, this is kind of a tough one, but how about the best player or maybe a handful of players that you ever saw play as an official?
The Hap kid from Rock Ridge was really good. I saw Marcus Liberty play for King at Galesburg. That one you really got me on, because we don't. Joey was really good. Rod Thompson were really good. That team that went to second in the state, there was always good players there. So
Yeah.
probably saw more at Galesburg because they were more the Chicago type teams that came.
Right. Okay. Finally, what will you miss the most about officiating basketball?
Getting up and going in somewhere, getting in the car, packing your bag during the day, making sure that it's going to be the camaraderie of the guys. I got 2 games left. It's starting to sink in, but with the things that I'm going to do, and I'm going to try to keep mentoring guys. If a guy's having a problem, his game just doesn't feel right. If he gives me a call and says, "Hey, can you come watch me work?" That'll be the stuff that I want to do. And I hopefully that they realize that I'm there to give back to the game. And, cause it's been a big part of my life. It's just going to be the camaraderie that you have.
Okay.
I'm not going to miss the long drives to LaSalle, Peru and all those places by yourself. But I am going to miss the camaraderie.
Okay. Well, that wraps up our conversation, Dave. You're not only a Hall of Fame official, you're a Hall of Fame person in my book. You've given so much to high school sports and athletes over the years. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody and say thank you for all you've done. And thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Jay. And thank you for your little podcast here. I've watched nearly every one of them. You do a great job. And like I said in our meeting, I remember you as a little statistics guy.
Yeah.
Barry. And
yeah, back in the 80s.
Yeah,
Back in the 70s, actually. So, yeah.
I'm really glad to see you land where you did because you're doing a great job. You always have, but I'm glad to see you're doing it for the radio station.
I appreciate that. And thanks again for joining me, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.